Okay, we're at 6 p.m. IST sharp, and I think, Deepika, there are a few more joining. So, is it okay with all of you if we wait for another minute or two?
But Museum of
That's fine.
is one of the oldest museums in Chennai.
By the
Hello.
way, Ashwara, just to apologize in advance, I have a session in 30 minutes time, so I will exit before the end of the session. My apologies in advance.
Sure, no problem, Estelle.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody, the ones who have joined recently. Please come on camera, just say hi and stay if you can. Hi, hi, Madhumita.
Hi.
I think you're on mute, Madhumita. I can't hear
I'll be
you.
following it off camera because I have to cook right now. Thank you.
No problem, Madhumita. Thank you so much. Okay. Let the others join. I'll at least start with the introduction, right? Good evening, everybody. Welcome to CTT's CCAU webinar. Today we have Cristina joining in, and I have a small brief introduction. I would request all of you to please mute yourselves and unmute whenever you need to speak so that we can keep the disturbance away. Okay, thank you so much. So, Christina is a social leadership coach. She is an award winning Master Certified Coach with International Coaching Federation. She is also someone who has a BA and MBA from Harvard University. She spent 15 years in management consulting, program management, and engineering services. And then for the last 13 years, Christina has coached global change makers across Fortune 500 companies, startups, NGOs, and government agencies. She is She's a partner with clients at all levels, from C-suite to frontline managers, to co-create possibilities and help them bring their best selves to their work. Christina is going to be coming in today with the title, Why is Agenda Setting So Hard? The description of it, and understand the relationship between broader coaching agreements and session agenda. She is going to also address agenda setting challenges commonly experienced by all the coaches, what it is to partner with the clients to meaningful explore and agenda alternatives, partner with the client to identify a desired outcome of the session they are having, and notice subtle shifts and the impact on the coaching agreements. If I've missed anything, Christina, please excuse
No,
me.
even I'm sort of impressed, and I know myself. Thank you for that one.
Thank you so much. Over to
Excellent.
you.
Ladies, just a question. Will you guys be managing the chat, or would you like me to look at it from time to time?
No,
If you
I'll
could,
be managing the chat. Go ahead.
perfect. So if at any point people have questions, just read them out to me in the chat.
Yeah.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Let me share my screen, see if that works. Ashwarya and Deepika, let me know if it works.
It's
Can you
working.
see it?
Yes.
Perfect. So thank you so much, everyone. I am joining you from Puerto Rico to me, in the Caribbean Sea. So that's probably at the other side of the world for most of you. Thank you for this invitation. Today I'm going to talk to you about something that is close to my heart as a coach, which is agenda setting. When I was going through my MCC journey, this was one of the big challenges, right? To make this jump from my PCC way of thinking to an MCC way of thinking. So today I'm going to talk about how I made that jump. And I would love for you to post questions throughout our session. And we will probably dedicate about the last 20 minutes or so to having a discussion, to hearing your thoughts and your questions. Let me see. Can Cristina fast forward the slides? And by the way, at the end of the session, I will share a takeaway handout so that you guys don't have to take notes if you don't want to. Okay. All right. So let's have a little refresher about what it means to set an agenda at the MCC level. So there's 3 distinctions. One is the coach partners with the client, and this word partner is very important. I know most of you are either coaches going for your next credential, or student coaches. So as much as possible, I'll try to make the distinction between our everyday coaching and then coaching that we submit for review by the ICF. And sometimes we know there's a few distinctions, right? So if at any point any of you have questions about that, just let me know. So the coach partners with the client to explore. Explore is also an interesting word that keeps popping up when we talk about the MCC level. The topic or the focus of the session at a level that is meaningful to the client. So we have partner, we have explore, and we have meaningful. And these are themes. Okay. The next one is coach partners with the client to keep the desired outcome as a guide to the coaching conversation in a flexible, gentle, and natural manner. And when I started preparing for MCC, I was like, what the heck does flexible, gentle, and natural mean? So in this conversation, I'm going to give you my recipe for what this means. And my hope is that you come up with your own recipe of what this means to you in your own style and authentic voice. Okay. Let's see. The third one, coach notices subtle shifts in the conversation and invites the client to change direction if the client desires. Maybe some of you, when you've been at the ACC level or the PCC level, when you get an agenda, you hang on to it for dear life throughout the session because you have to ask them at the end, how did it go with that agenda? At the MCC level, we flow more with the client. And even when the client doesn't speak that they want to change the agenda, we notice those shifts and invite. And inviting is a key thing in coaching. We invite the client to do things. We invite into the conversation. We invite exploration. Okay? Let's see. So one of the keys for me in agenda setting is understanding the interplay between the broader coaching agreement, right? What's in our contract, what we talked about as the guide for the whole coaching relationship, and the specific session's agenda. Okay, what do we do in the coaching agreement? How does it translate into the session agenda? And I would love if there are thoughts on this, Ashwarya Deepika, in the chat. Just let me know. you can pause me at any time. Okay.
Sure, Christina. Nothing yet. I will surely come in whenever
Okay.
there.
Good. Thank you. So the coaching agreement is, think of it as an umbrella agreement. At least that's the way I think of it, where it's present and alive in every session. What does this client want in their life? What is the style that we've agreed to in terms of how forward the coach is or not? Right? So I think about this every time, and I check in sometimes. How does this thing that is coming up for you today, how does it link to that wider coaching agreement that we've talked about? And at the end, I'm going to give you some of my questions for agenda setting. So, what are some of the common agenda setting challenges that I see? And I would love to know if these are your challenges or if you see other challenges. Okay. So the first one is lack of clarity. The client is not sure what they want to achieve in the session, or they say they want to achieve one thing, but they're really talking about a whole bunch of other things. Another one that I think is very much related to this is clients just diving in. They've been so eager for a conversation with us that when we start saying, okay, what would you like to focus on today? They do a monologue for quite a few minutes where 10 zillion things come up. They might be related to each other, they might not. So what do we do with that? Right? Another thing that I've seen that is a common challenge is the measures of success. And different coaches have different perspectives on what a measure of success is. And clients have different perspectives on what a measure of success is. How will the client know at the end of the session that they got to where they wanted to go? And how will you know? And how much do you as the coach need to be clear on that measure of success? Right? Some coaches around the world say if the measure of success is not super specific, super tangible, super clear, it's not a measure of success. And other coaches, and I think I fall more to that side, maybe not to the extreme I'll share, but other coaches say as long as the client understands, the measure of success understands it, the measure of success could be anything. It could be a feeling. It could be something in their body. So this is one of those common challenges. And when you listen to a lot of recordings, I'm trained as an assessor. You hear this quite a lot, this tension. Then the fourth big challenge that I see is the evolution in the session. We do coaching sessions and coaching conversations, so there's a transformation. So how does the agenda evolve with that transformation? If something's happening with the who of that person and the what of what they're thinking about, how does the agenda dance with that? So, okay, in the chat, do we have any other challenges that people see?
Yes. There are a lot of them who are relating to this though. But but starting with Surya. So do we set milestones of each sessions?
Okay. Well, in a little bit, I think we'll go back to Surya and ask her to clarify what she means by that. I'm
So,
not clear.
are you hearing us? Please unmute yourselves and
Yes.
explain.
Yeah. So I think like what our presenter is saying, this question we'll come back to it later, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
sure.
So Surya, think about it.
Mhm.
And if I haven't answered your question,
Mhm.
just pipe up,
Sure, Christina. Thank you.
right? Okay, thank you. All right, Ashwarya, go ahead.
We have another one saying often a coachee, after stating the goals and session's desired outcome, includes a hope that you share thoughts from your experience. In my environment, they don't seem to understand why you can't offer solutions. How should one navigate that?
That's an interesting challenge. And I think when we were talking about this relationship between the umbrella agreement and the coaching session agenda, what I try to do, and I'll go to the next slide just so that, oh, what did I do? Okay. Here it is. Okay. So one of the things I do, and it's like the first thing on this slide, is that I try, we need to educate our clients about what coaching is, what coaching isn't. So I try to do a lot of that within that umbrella coaching agreement. And I have this conversation, which is the elephant in the room, very early on. And the way I navigate this, you don't have to do it the same way, is I tell my clients, I will not tell you what to do. I have two exceptions to that rule. And this is exactly what I tell them almost word for word. One is, if I see something very clearly that I think you're not seeing and that it might be useful for you, I will ask you for permission first. And if you give it to me, I will share it. And you do with that as you will. No worries at all. So that's one exception. The other exception is, if you want to know my opinion, my perspective on something, ask me directly and I'll give it to you. If you're having, there's no problem with that. Now, if you're having an issue with a client who basically wants a teacher, right? If you have teaching moments every once in a while, it's okay because you're mostly being a coach. So you're not violating the ICF Code of Ethics or anything like that. Now, if you're falling into that trap all the time, then with curiosity, you can navigate, is this the right relationship for both of you? Maybe that client needs something else. Or, I think there's someone unmuted.
Yeah, I've taken care of it.
Thank you. Or, for example, with curiosity, you can have a conversation with the client about why do they feel they need someone to teach them and tell them things. What's happening with their own inner voice, right? So there's a lot of space to do this. I don't see any problem with specific moments. There's moments where you can say, oh, a tool popped up for me that I think might be useful. May I share it with you? Or, hey, what could you benefit from a role play? Right? There's flexibility in all of this. I hope I've answered that question or that comment. Anything else? Sorry, before I move on.
When the client starts to share, there is no specific agenda and thereafter shares a load of narratives.
Okay. So here's what I do, and it's also in this little slide. So I'm glad I could predict a little bit of what the common challenges are. So what I do with that is summarize and segment what I heard. So I think of it as buckets. And I create buckets, right? So I tell the client, may I share what I've just heard? And then I go with like, okay, you've shared your challenge with your boss. You've shared your emotions around getting up to go to work. You shared, right? So I segment it for them. So in a way, I mirror it back to them in an organized way. And then that way, I can be like, is there anything else that you would like to add to our buckets? And again, this is something that you can agree upon in that big coaching agreement on how you're going to do this piece. I explain the bucket idea to them so that they're not surprised when I go, this group of stuff, this group of stuff. What was that? What you said? Yes. Okay. What would you like to talk about out of any of those? Right? What would be most meaningful? What would make the difference? And sometimes they say, I want to start here and then maybe add this other piece or this other piece. Right? But this bucket thing is really easy for me to do, and it's really easy to navigate this challenge. Okay, Ashwarya, go ahead.
There are few who are saying clarity is the key. The client is not a trained ICF, trained in ICF markers to navigate through coaching conversation as they want to. There is a question. I'm curious to know how to ascertain measure of success when the outcome is something intangible. Example, I want to feel more confident.
So I think here we need to make a distinction between the everyday coaching and then coaching for a recording and an assessment. What do I mean by that? When I'm coaching every day and I know a client enough, I know if the client, when they say, I want to feel complete, or I want to feel confident, or I know about them enough to know whether they have clarity when they say that or they don't. For an assessment, that is not enough. Because one thing that I didn't really realize, and when I was going through all of these processes and I was not an assessor myself, is that what is being assessed in your recordings is your capability of behaving according to the markers, your capability of making the most of what the client presents. Okay? So if your client, right, in your day-to-day, if the client, let's say that in the summary of the buckets, the client says, what I want to talk about is how to make the best presentation to my boss next Tuesday. And my measure of success is having a clear outline for that, right? In our day-to-day, the client already said it, it's clear. Okay. For the assessment, the assessor is not assessing the client. They're assessing you. So you have to make sure that you say, you can reconfirm, or you state, or that you are clear enough with the client. And that those measures of success for that third party who is listening is pretty clear. But you cannot do it in a way that it gets in the way of the flow of the conversation. Okay? So when it's a feeling, and they say, oh, I'm going to feel complete. How will you know if you feel complete? And then they can describe, well, I'm going to have a sensation here. I'm going to, and as long as they have that clarity, and maybe you can, for example, one of the things I do, I use range a lot. So from 1 to 5. And what does 5 mean? They'll normally be able to describe it to you. What does 1 mean? And then, okay, which number would you like to get to? And that at the end. And that way, it gives you something that you understand, the client understands, and that assessor understands. Did I answer the question, or is there something?
Yatish, do you think you got your answer?
Yes, Christina, thank you very much. I think the distinction between coaching every day and coaching for an assessment, I think that was really fantastic. Thanks so much.
No problem. Those are things I wish somebody had told me. So I'm telling you.
Thank you. Thanks. That really helps.
Christina, I think there is one more question.
Yes.
Kiran is asking, in deep coaching conversations, clients often present surface level agendas that may not reflect their true transformational needs. What advanced techniques do you use to respectfully challenge and co create an agenda that leads to profound shifts rather than just solving immediate concerns?
That's a very good question. And again, I'm going to make the distinction between everyday coaching and coaching for an assessment. Okay? In everyday coaching, as part of a big coaching agreement where you have multiple sessions, sometimes you're going to talk about huge transformation and the deep who of that person. And sometimes what they really need is, how can I get to the gym 3 times a week instead of 1? You're going to have that mix in everyday coaching conversations and coaching engagements. And to me, that's fine. Because people, imagine if like people had deep transformations every week. I don't know if humans are capable of that, to be honest. So, so to me, that's fine for everyday coaching. Now, when you're coaching, when you know that that's a session that might be assessed, then you want to have this transformational coaching. And there's ways to do that. And I'll give you some of my own questions. I think maybe in the next slide or the slide after. But one of the key things in the agenda setting, remember when we talked about the MCC level agenda setting and it said meaningful? So why is this meaningful to you? How could your life change if you achieve this thing that may seem prosaic to you, but there is something. You can have a transformational session about anything, but don't force your client to have a deep transformational conversation when what they really need that week is, I'm stuck with this minor thing, right? Because then it becomes my agenda, not their agenda. So be aware of yourself enough to know why you're trying to get to where you're trying to get to. And when I show you the questions, maybe that'll spark something in you and we could have a conversation at that moment of what are your questions to get deeper, right? And remember the dance between the umbrella coaching agreement and the session agenda. How does this relate to that big coaching agreement that we had, where you said at the end of the year, I want to be my best self in this thing and this thing? How does this get you there? There's a lot of ways to do that, but not, by the way, not all sessions. And I tell this to people who are going for MCC. Even though I am an MCC, not all my sessions are MCC level sessions, because maybe that's not what the client needs, right? So don't expect, if you're going for your PCC or your MCC, that every session that you do should be given to an assessor. They'd be like, oh, yes, you passed. That's great. You can have all the skills, and some sessions, that's just not what the client and the spirit requires. Okay. Any other questions? Okay.
None
All
from
right.
the audience.
All right. So my approach to some of these challenges. So I already explained the agenda setting process early in the coaching agreement. So my clients are already pretty well coached where they know that we have to set an agenda. They know we're going to get measures of success. They're already thinking about it. Right? Give client ownership of the agenda setting process. A lot of times what I see in coaches is that the coach is doing the heavy lifting. No. Especially the higher up you get, the less heavy lifting you do. I don't have to think about the agenda for you. A lot of times I tell them, we're in a laboratory or laboratory, where you're the lead scientist and I'm your trusty assistant as the coach. So give them that ownership. They'll get it. Okay. I already talked about summarizing and segmenting. Another thing that I do throughout the session, and normally I think of the session in 3 acts as if it were a play. The agenda setting at the beginning, the transformation in the middle, and the plan at the end. So I check in on the agenda. How are we doing? Do we want to pivot? Once doing every one of those 3 acts. Okay. Just so I know that the client still wants, even in their evolution, they still want to do what they said they wanted to do, or they want to do something else. And I use a technique that I call choose your own adventure. which is, remember there were those books. You guys are probably too young, but there used to be these books where people could choose their own adventure, where it's like, okay, if you want the character to go on a trip to India, read this, open this. And if you want the character to go on vacation to Spain, you go this way. So I tell clients sometimes, okay, we've gotten to the point where now it's like choose your own adventure. We can explore one of the other things that we have in the buckets, or this thing that you just talked about, or we could talk about something else that I don't see. Where would you like to go now? Where would you like to go now? Okay. And then, as I said, the session measures of success are fluid, but they need to be clear to the client. And if you're having an assessment, they need to be clear to the assessor that it's clear to the client. Okay. All right. Moving on. Here are some of my agenda setting questions. What are you seeking in today's conversation? And seeking is a transformative word, which opens up avenues of exploration for you as a coach. What is the meaning? You can use meaning, you can use significance, you can use impact of what you want to talk about today. What's it meaning? What's the meaning of it for you, as in your who, as in who you are? What is the impact of this in what you're trying to achieve? And the reason why I use the who and the what is because the who is transformational and the what relates to the topic or the focus. And again, if we're looking at the recording, if we're looking at the assessment, it's looking at both the who and the what. Okay. I like this one. What could change if ... Right? What could change if they achieve whatever they said they wanted to achieve? What could change in your life if blah, 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 blah? I asked them straight out, what is the measure of success for our conversation today? Or what would you like to have at the end of our conversation today? And that's really important because a session where we're talking about a list is very different from a session where we're talking about a decision made or making a decision or clarity around something. So that's why I think it's always really important, not just because it's a requirement. That's why I think it's always really important to have that session measure of success. What's the approach? What's going to be our approach today in terms of both content and process? Does the client want me to be more of a brainstormer with them today? Or are you okay with us doing our typical coaching thing where I ask questions and give you a lot of space to reflect? What does the client need me to be today in that session? The areas to explore, that's a really important one. In order, okay, so we're talking about, let's say that we're talking about improving your relationship with your parents and what you would like at the end of the conversation is 3 steps, a 3-step plan to improve that relationship. What are the key areas to explore for improving that relationship? Have the client think about that. You don't have to think about that for them. And then, really important, I always confirm the coaching agreement, which is, okay, this is what I heard that we're doing. This is where we're getting to at the end. And these are the areas we're going to explore. Is that correct, or is there anything you would like to change about that? That's it. Those are my big questions. They're really basic, really important. So now, what I put up in the screen is a QR code for the session, this session's takeaways. Okay, so you just put that in. I'll put it in the chat as well. And you'll get a summary of what I just talked about, what was on the slides. Now, let's hear some questions, discussions. What's your approach? May I stop the share?
Yes.
Did everybody get the QR code? Okay, I'm going to stop in 5, 4, 3.
Yeah, I can
2.
download the PDF.
Okay, perfect. Stop the share. Excellent. All right, so now I think I can see everyone. Beautiful. Questions?
Yes, there is one question. Everybody, please start leaving your questions so I can quickly ask Christina, and then if required, you guys can come in too. So we have a question. What if the client just says that I am not looking for a specific outcome? I just want to talk about it. What is the best response to that?
Okay. I think the best response to that, or the response that I would give, like, hey, you're looking to talk about it. How would you like to feel at the end of our time together? What would make you feel complete at our, at the last time together? If I had a magic wand, what would you be thinking? How would you be transformed at the end of this? There's a lot of things that you can do. And if this is a day-to-day conversation, sometimes that's enough. Okay. Should you submit that if they say, no, 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 I just want to talk about it, and they insist? Should you submit that for assessment? No. Okay. Next question.
Okay. In multi-stakeholder coaching, example executive coaching, how do you navigate agenda setting when there is a potential conflict between the sponsor's
Yes.
objective and the client's personal aspirations, ensuring alignment without compromising the coaching partnership?
So I'll tell you how I do this. When I'm doing the coaching agreement with the sponsor, I have a frank conversation with a sponsor. And my frank conversation with the sponsor is this is the coaching space for the client. So I'm not going to tell you what the client says, what the client does. I'm not going to get in between you. This is their space. I'm their coach. If you want to have conversations with the client directly about what you want them to achieve in the coaching conversation, please go for it. But I'm not a go-between. That's the way I approach it. I understand that some other people may approach it differently. But if there's a huge conflict between what the sponsor wants to get and what the coach and what the client wants to get, I think then you need to have a conversation with the sponsor. That's my view on it. Again, my experience has been that sponsors let it be. Okay, what else? Let's see.
Wow.
So, thank you, Kieran, for the question.
What is the impact on you instead of typical? Oh, sorry. It's a sharing. I like what is the impact on you instead of the typical. Why is this important to you? Madhumata is asking to the magic wand question to a CEO, what if they say they want their wife, kids, and team members to change?
Huh. Well, typically, when I face those things? See, there's so many things that I do on automatic when I'm in coaching conversations that now that you guys are asking, I'm like, my initial response was to say to the client, may I challenge you on something? They would say yes or they would say no. I was like, who's sitting in this coaching chair? Who's getting coaching right now? What can you control? And what can you not control? And typically they'll get to the space where like, oh yeah, I can only control my reactions, my responses, not my wives or my kids. But it's interesting for me right now having this insight on myself as a coach. I'm like, wow, I do so many of these things. I have them so ingrained in me that when you ask me, what would I do? I'm like, what would I do? I do this all the time. So I do something, but it was a moment of, oh, so thank you for that.
Christina, I have a personal question. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
also an ACC trained coach, just FYI. So
Mhm.
I've heard these terms called laser focus coaching. There is action coaching, right? How different or how similar is agenda setting to those two concepts?
Mm. I've also heard those concepts, and I think I practice them sometimes, but I wouldn't say I'm an expert on them. So if somebody else here is an expert on them, I would love to know your thoughts. I think for me, if you're doing this, it's interesting because as a coach, you have to be a bit of a ninja in the sense that you have to move slow to move smoothly, and that smoothness makes you fast, right? So we create this space where there seems to be a lot of space because there's trust and safety and all these things. Yet we can help people transform their lives in 20 minutes. So my answer to this is if you're being intentional, there shouldn't be that much of a difference in agenda setting if you're doing laser coaching versus not. I think that's where I landed on. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay, I'll go back to the audience questions.
Okay.
Sharda is asking, do assessment tools usually precede coaching journey in most big organizations?
I think in most big organizations, they do. And the reason why is because they want to see some kind of return on their investment. And so the only way they can prove that to their board of directors or something is to show some kind of quantifiable, this is where people were. And after coaching, this is where people are now. So I think that's basically the only reason why it typically precedes it. In my own personal coaching, I don't really use assessment tools unless an organization requires it.
Okay. Yatish is at okay. He's mentioning his takeaways. Not all conversations need to be transformational. The three acts and what meaning or significance does this outcome hold for you? People are expressing that this is a brilliant insight and they're thanking you, Christina. Are there any questions? Yes. Many a times there is a triad conversation set up to get aligned to the goals. But what do you do if the client does not say much in that meeting but doesn't seem aligned to the goals later?
This is interesting because I used to have many more triad conversations when I was a people leader versus when I am a coach. As a coach, I don't typically have many triad conversations, to be honest. I think what I would do in this conversation, and maybe other people have different perspectives, and please, put them in the chat or pipe up. What I would normally do is have an individual conversation with the other two parties before doing the triad so that they understand what their role in the triad is and they understand how to give space for things to emerge from the coachee. And if I'm having that conversation with the coachee is, okay, what is this triad for? What are you hoping it? You know what? I have had triads recently. And this is exactly what I did, which was prepare the coachee before the conversation. What are you hoping to get out of it? Who do you have to be in the conversation to get what you hope to get out of it? What's your plan for that? Right? So that they have an idea of how to show up first. Because if not, a lot of times people have chemistries between them, especially bosses and employees. They have a set pattern between them. So if I don't have these conversations to prepare them ahead of time to sort of break up that pattern, my job and their job in that triad conversation is much more difficult, I think. So that's what I would do. Any other thoughts? Any other questions? Comments?
There are a lot of comments thanking you for such an amazing session, Christina. We do have 5 more minutes. Please, anybody who wants to question, who wants to share any of their experience and ask any doubts or queries, please come off camera, mute yourselves, and ask us.
Yeah. What would you do the same as me? What would you do differently? You can talk about that too.
Hi, this is Surya, Christina. So back to my question on milestones for each session, right?
Yes.
Is it common that in some sessions you may not have a very clear milestone yet because it may not be tangible to be able to define clearly, and in other coaching conversations you may have some clearly defined goal or measure of success that you achieve?
I think so. Sorry, at least for me.
Mhm.
And as I'm listening to you, would it be right to say that milestones and measures of success might be interchangeable
That's right.
in this
That's right.
sense?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, yeah, I always have measures of success for the sessions.
Mhm.
Sometimes they're more touchy-feely and sometimes they're way more tangible. Now, if you have a client who's making no progress towards their goals, towards their transformation, and either because their measures of success are just too tangible
Mhm.
to be transformational always, or the opposite, they're too wishy-washy, so there's no measure of success, you can go back to this, have an umbrella conversation,
Mm.
right? Bring the elephant in the room.
Right. And
Like
that's
your
exactly
observation.
what I've done before, where I know when I was coaching a university student, and I noticed that there was a lot of excuses for not achieving what we spoke about. So I said, okay, let's go back to the coaching agreement. Do you think this is actually what we want to work on, or you want to change what you want to work on? Yeah. Okay.
No conversation is off limits, in fact.
Right. Thank you.
Okay.
Hi,
Go ahead,
Christina.
Wendy.
It's
Hi.
Wendy. Lovely
Wendy.
presentation. Thank you. Very, very helpful. This isn't so much a question as a comment, and just want to acknowledge the great tips that you gave. When I was first introduced to coaching by a new president that came into our organization, there was no setup about what coaching is, and there wasn't any kind of intake. And I would meet with her every other week, and it'd be, so what's on your agenda? That was the same question. And I used to get so stressed because I was like, what do you mean? What's on my, like, I had no idea what to bring. So I think, and I've now coached for 15 plus years. And this is just a great reminder to go back to kind of the basics and how important designing that alliance is and the partnership. So thank you for this. And I love the agenda setting questions that you shared. So yeah, just a really good reminder, because it was just not a good experience for me.
Yeah, absolutely, Wendy. And thank you for bringing that client perspective of, yes, they need this education. They are the experts in their content, but we are the experts in the process. So we need to partner with them in that sense. Ashwarya, do you think it's okay if I answer a last question I saw in the chat, which is any special tips for handling goal setting with C-level executives? I think with C-level executives, they want to get things done. So one of the things that we bring is, and as I do this especially in the coaching agreement setting, it's like, what do you need out of this coaching relationship that you don't get anywhere else? Right? That's a good way to make them think. And the goal setting, again, after that, it's the same as everybody else, no matter if they're like sweeping the floors of the factory, or they're running 10,000 factories. Sometimes they're too specific, sometimes they're too broad, sometimes they don't know, sometimes it's the same. But this idea of what do you need in this relationship, in this space, what environment do you want us to create together that you don't get anywhere else? I think for a C-suite person is especially valuable. Right. Whoop. And 1 minute over. I'm sorry.
No problem, Christina. I think it's an honor that you spared your minute. Thank you so much, Christina, and thank you so much, everybody. For our audience, the CCU form is in the chat box. Please do fill it because backdating it becomes very difficult for us. And Christina, oh my God, I think everybody in this room agrees that it was a mind-blowing, amazing session for all coaches here. Yes, we need to give this to Christina. Thank you so much, Christina, for such an honest, such a genuine reply and insights into your coaching world and making it a very natural thing that what each one of us go through. So anybody wants to come ahead and please thank, then go ahead because I am falling short of words.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great evening, great afternoon, great morning if you're like me.
Thank you, Christina.
Thank you, Christina.
Thank
Great
you,
session.
Christina.
Thank
See
you.
you
Thank
soon.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
so
Thank
much.
you, Christina. Thank you. Thank you,
Bye.
Christina. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye.
Thank you for your generosity.
Thank you for that comment. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
Christina.
Ciao.